Senator, the speculation is that you're in your toughest battle since you went to the Senate way back in the 40s. Do you consider that to be true?
Well, I don't know. I consider any campaign a battle. I don't know who's doing the speculating, but I always campaign the same way I've always campaigned in these elections. I've been now in 23 of them, and I don't know. You never know whether they're tough or not tough till the votes are counted.
How have people taken to your Maggie mobile around the state?
Well, pretty good. I think people like you to come in, particularly in smaller areas where you have the opportunity to be on the main street and talk with people. And they come up and ask a lot of questions, and we have good discussions, and they like to see the candidate and work with them. And of course, this time it was all the more important because the time was a little shorter for campaigning than normally.
Mm-hmm. Senator, how do you feel the campaign has been going, particularly in eastern Washington? You've been over there recently.
I was over there for about a week. I think it's going all right. I think this campaign, any problems that I may have in this campaign are not necessarily due to, they're due to just one thing, Andy, is to get a vote out. The 35% of the people voted in the primary election. And if you get a reasonable vote out, why, I don't think there's any serious problem in this campaign any more than there has been in the others, where we'd have a 65, 70, 75, 80% vote. I don't think there's any question about it if a vote would come out. But it is an off year, and it's only one statewide race, the Senate race, and there are some very important initiatives on the ballot, but they're not the emotional issues like the right to work or things of that kind. And an off year also has less voting, but we're hopeful that we've been trying to help stir up a great deal of interest in getting out to vote. Now, I know that all the radio and television stations have been doing the same thing, but I don't think there's much question about it if the vote comes out.
Mm-hmm. The last time you ran in an off-year election was 1950, if I remember.
Yes.
Do you think there's more apathy in this election than there was in 50?
It was about the same. It was a very light vote, and my majority was not very big numerically. It was fairly good in proportion to the amount of vote cast.
Back in 1956, when you ran against former Governor Langley, you had a margin of around 220,000, I believe, something in that area. Of course, this was a presidential year, too. But on a percentage basis, you came out with about 60% of the vote. Is that your hope this year?
Well, I think the primary vote, even though it was light, if that was projected, the majority I had in the primary was projected up to double the vote, or the same vote we had in the Langley campaign. It'll run about the same, the percentage-wise.
Your opposition has been asking for a television debate. Is there any possibility that there will be one between now and Election Day?
Well, I don't know just what they particularly mean by that. I'm debating every day. I'm out in front of the public. I cast 4,251 votes in the United States Senate alone on issues of major importance, and I think everyone knows where I stand. I don't know just what you debate about.
What about...
There's no use debating about something that there it is. You've taken a stand, and that's it. There can be no debate about a record.
There's been ideas around in the press that the state voters may have turned a little more conservative in this election. The Goldmark incident is cited as an example. Have you found any evidence of that?
Well, I don't know that the number of voters, the general trend is more conservative. There's what we call the right-wing group. Surely, if they've been more active, let's put it that way. Now, whether they're more vocal than they are numerical remains to be seen. But I think they've been much more active, particularly in eastern Washington, than normally in this campaign. And usually that shows up more the lighter the vote, the more that shows up. And I would think that maybe they would cast more votes than normally, if their activity is any criteria of that.
Senator, in your travels around the state, what have you found out from the people as far as President Kennedy's Medicare program is concerned?
Well, of course, I voted for Senator Jackson, and I both voted for Medicare, and I'm sure both of us would again. I find that I think the majority of the people are for getting started on it. No one in Congress denies the need exists, and what we are arguing about is the method. And people are saying, well, go ahead with get started. No one method is completely free of certain faults or bugs. No one method's perfect, but to get started, this is the same fight I had 29 years ago when I introduced the first old age assistance bill in the state legislature. We had lots of discussions about the method, but we made a start. And I think Medicare for the aged is in the same relative position as a social need of the people today. And this is the way to start it. And I think people are going to demand this, and I think the great majority of the people are for getting started in this vital need that exists in the country today.
What are some of the other concerns that you've had expressed to you around the state?
Well, I think there's a great revival of again, where a need exists, of hoping that we can do something about federal aid to education in the universities and junior colleges, your own place in Bellingham. There again, everybody admits that the need exists, and the controversy is over the method. And people are saying, well, all right, go back and figure out some method. Make a start. Maybe it isn't perfect, but the need's there and should be met. I find a great deal of that. Of course, people are wondering how the farm program may work. There's some theory, but everyone was well pleased with Congress, the action of Congress in the trade bill, which we hope is much on the plus side for us because we're an export area, the Puget Sound area. And then they feel much better in view of the situation in Cuba and other places that we spend a great deal of time building up what we think is the most powerful and best and most efficient military establishment in the world has ever known, as a matter of fact. And the Polaris thing over in Bangor and all these things, I think, I find that people there's certain facets of the things where maybe they don't quite like this thing or that thing, but generally overall, I don't find too much opposition to what has been going on in this administration or in the Congress this time. As a matter of fact, I find that we should have done more, and they want us to get at these two needs I suggest, and do more. So, of course, there's always the great concern about the foreign matters, foreign affairs, and we're concerned, the people are concerned, and you find lots. I like to discuss that with them, and we sit down and discuss it, and I think people feel better when they discuss some of the problems with you, and the many facets, and I think they're all in agreement that this country, although it's the leader in the free world in this terrible fight we have against communism, which we all recognize and we all hate. We hate communism, all of us. That you just can't, in this world today, you can't just shoot from the hip on it. You've just got to calculate and plan, be firm, but you've got to move very carefully because the threat of a World War III may be a chain of events that no one meant to happen. You've got to watch.
Mr. Christensen, this is your first political effort. You're going up against one of the biggest vote-getters in Washington State. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel somewhat, Andy, like a man with a hand axe thus far in the campaign, because we've only been at the thing for 10 months. We've done it with somewhere around the neighborhood of $60,000. We know that he does have somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000. We've had one billboard. He's had 200. But when you examine the fact that he has had 25 years and has hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we have $60,000, and that we actually arrive at about 74% of his vote in 10 months, I think it's a small miracle, and I think that we're going to be able to do it in the final election.
Why would you say that you would be able to beat Senator Magnuson when former Governor Langley wasn't able to do it in '56, a man who was more well-known than you are?
For the simple reason, Andy, I think that Governor Langley basically didn't want to run for the United States Senate. I think that he was encouraged to by political leadership because of his capabilities. I want the United States Senate seat for a philosophy that I represent, and I'm willing to fight for it. I think that makes a lot of difference in the tenor of a campaign and what you have to say to the people. I'm really concerned that certainly people want virtues in politicians that they have not had in the past years in many political leaders.
You've been around the state now, what, 2 or 3 times. Where have you found your biggest support?
Well, of course, we found a strong support in eastern Washington, which we carried. Mr. Ben Larson and I carried eastern Washington, 20 counties. We made a very serious chink in the wall in the Magnuson strength by carrying Spokane County. We carried Garfield County 3-1. We carried Yakima County, which we suspected would happen. Then on the west side, Whatcom County, we feel was a real good race. We can take Senator Magnuson in Whatcom County if the people will get out and work, the Republicans, the Democrats, and the independents who have pledged themselves to us. One interesting facet is, in the Pierce County area, I think there are about as many Democrats as you could hope for in any one county. And yet Governor Langley ran. I wouldn't be quoted exactly on this statistic, but I think that he lost by 22,000 in Pierce County. And according to some of the newsmen there, if Senator Magnuson can't carry Pierce County by 40,000 votes, he can't win the election. Now, this past election primary, I only tailed him by 11,000 votes. With Ben Larson's votes, which are Republican votes in support of the Republican philosophy, we only tail a little over 7,000 votes. Well, there's a vast difference between 7,000 and 40,000 votes that he has to pick up if he's going to make a clean sweep of the state. So the chink has been very seriously made. We've had response from Washington, D.C. that there is a great deal of concern about this on his part.
Both in Michigan and California, the John Birch Society has caused some problems in the Republican ranks. Do you foresee anything like that in the state of Washington?
No, I don't. For the simple reason, very honestly, Andy, we started out the campaign, we had one basic idea: tell the people what we think, and that's the truth. And let those groups of people who have their variant and divergent interests, if they believe what we are stating, then so let them join our effort, and so be it. We haven't gone out of our way to appease or to please or to do battle with any social segment of our society. This isn't our job. Our job is stating our case to the people, and on that basis allowing the people as individuals to join our effort.
Your case, it seems to me, has been built around a fairly conservative philosophy. This seems to be one difference between your campaign and that of Governor Langley in 1956. Do you think that this is a telling difference?
No, actually not. The Seattle newspapers aren't sure what I am. I think as the issue develops, I state my position and someone would have to come to the conclusion. We take one example. I'm certainly opposed to trade with communist nations. Senator Magnuson some time ago was on television and another channel in this state and made the statement he wanted an increase of trade with Red China. Now, I'm emphatically opposed to trade with Red China. At one time, he suggested that we get out of Berlin. I think it would be completely unwise to get out of Berlin. At these points, certainly, I suspect you might call me much more conservative than his view, and I'm rather proud of that fact. I don't think you can pin me to a spectrum, Andy, because conservative or liberal or middle of the road means something altogether different to every American individual you meet. I like to refer to myself as just a common sense American, and that should be enough. I have allegiance to the Constitution. And my God, and I figure that should be enough for a man to have the basic ingredients for statesmanship.
You think that you're a former Lutheran minister will help you or hurt you?
Oh, I don't know. I was told when I first began that Roman Catholic people, this was told to me by a very professional politician, that Roman Catholic people would cut me up because there was so much thinking about the Republican or the Roman Catholic vote. This has proved out to be very untrue. The Roman Catholic people in Seattle area put a tremendous article in their own newspaper on their own behalf without even asking in support of my candidacy. So the professional politician has been wrong from last October until now about our campaign. They said we'd never get enough money. They said we'd never be able to open offices. They said we'd never get the help of the people at the grassroots, and everything that they said we couldn't do, including the Roman Catholic support, we have gotten, and gotten it wonderfully.
Right after the primary, you said that you intended to expose some of the things which you considered bad in Senator Magnuson's record in the past 25 years. Have you done so, or is this something that we can expect later on?
Well, you can certainly expect it on a regular basis, Andy. Let's just take a basic fact. The Grand Coulee Dam. Now, President Kennedy was here himself and made the statement that the Grand Coulee Dam was practically built by the incumbent. Well, the incumbent, the elder politician of our state, wasn't elected until 1937, and the Grand Coulee Dam was built in 1932-33. In other words, an untruth was told to the people, and the people accept this type of thing. And the thing that amazes me, we pride ourselves in being the best educated people in the world, and a politician comes along, tells us he's done something for us, which in reality he hasn't, and the people swallow it. Now, there's interest in the fact that the elder politician of our state certainly has been interested in cancer. Andy, aren't you interested in killing cancer? Aren't most of these people interested in fact, all of them, in killing off the dread disease cancer? Maybe we haven't passed legislation. I certainly would hate to see such a thing come out as a platform plank for a politician to run on. I think this is how degenerate politics has gotten. The World's Fair, President Eisenhower pushed the button to begin it. He went back to Congress and got the appropriation for it. But who takes credit? The elder politician of the state. The elder politician is proclaiming that the state's in good shape. Would you want to say that in Bellingham? Are there so many people employed in Bellingham that you just possibly can't find people to work for you? If you go to Spokane and find it as a depressed area, if you go to Grays Harbor and find it as a depressed area, would you say losing that 70% of our logging industry is growing and moving ahead? Would you say a salmon industry on an emergency basis is a real fine product of 25 years of service? Andy, all I want to do, and people say to me, be positive. I don't know how much more positive I could be than to tell the people in this audience the truth as what I know it. And maybe you have here the infringement of the clergyman on a white charger with a sword. That's all I want to do is tell people the truth. You know, I've said that I wanted to debate with Senator Magnuson, and I do, Andy. And I'm willing to lose a debate. I'm willing to go against 25 years of living off the public payroll to debate with the man before all the public in this station, if possible. Because I'd rather have people vote against me out of informed positions than to vote for me and not knowing what the issues really are. I proved my interest in grassroots knowledge of the issues by going to 938 meetings up till the primary. And I don't think there's a candidate in the United States that's done that thus far in this primary.
You seem to have politics in your blood by this time. If the outcome of the election in November is such that you are not in Washington, would you be interested in keeping going with politics?
Andy, I honestly must tell you in all frankness, I haven't even considered the idea of losing. Isn't that a strange...
Representative Westland, the Congress has taken its time about adjourning for this session, which means that you haven't had too much time out among the political hustings. How do you think this is going to affect your campaign?
Well, Andy, you're quite right. This was the longest peacetime session of Congress since 1850. And what it means is that I have to do in 3 weeks what I normally would have done in 2 or 3 months. That is, to try to get around the 2nd Congressional District and to put my campaign into effect in a very, very short time.
How do you think your campaign is coming?
Well, Andy, I think it looks all right. I suppose, actually, the candidate probably knows less about how he stands than anyone else. I think I'm in a real race, but I like the vote that I received in the primary. I think I obtained about 56% of the total vote, despite the fact that my Democrat opponents had quite a horse race. And as a matter of fact, this was the best vote I have ever received in the primary. From what I've heard so far in 1 week of campaigning, I think I'm going to be reelected.
Would you say that this is going to be a relatively easy campaign for you in comparison to other campaigns you've run?
No, sir, not at all. I think this is a real tough campaign. It's obvious from the brochures that my opponent has put out, that which cost quite a little bit of money, Andy, that he's well financed. I know that he's been working hard in meeting people for quite a few months. And I figure that it's a good, tough race. But I've been in those before, Andy, as you well know.
You speak of brochures. Your opponent has distributed one which maintains that you have a poor voting record in Congress.
Yes.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, I guess my reaction is perfectly normal, Andy. Match my voting record against, an attendance record against most anyone. This little brochure that he put out is so full of misquotations that the whole thing becomes of no use. Just for example, in one place there, Andy, he says, where I'm curled up in the back seat of Hugo Hawkins' automobile, coming back from Vancouver, where I'd been defeated in the finals of the British Columbia Championship by Chuck Hunter. Then underneath that it says, 1960, Congress in session. Well, I looked at that and I remembered quite well that very situation. The only difference was, Andy, that it happened when I was in college, back in 1924 or 25. This is one of them.
Representative Westland, what's your program for Whatcom County?
Well, I think one of the real programs, one of the real things that's got to be done here in this Whatcom County area, Andy, is on this lumber situation and this competition with British Columbia, where we have exported literally thousands of jobs up to B.C. I put in a bill to eliminate the application of the Jones Act to our shipping so that we could use foreign bottoms to ship our lumber from Bellingham to the East Coast and thereby save $10 a thousand. Now, President Kennedy has approved that legislation. And I would hope that the Congress will pass my bill or someone else's bill. I don't care which bill it is that's passed, and help us to compete on a reasonably competitive basis with British Columbia.
Mr. Moore, your campaign for a congressman in the 2nd District doesn't seem to have gotten off the ground. Is this because of lack of money, lack of enthusiasm, or an unbeatable incumbent?
No, I think we're getting off the ground now. I would say a lack of apathy in the primaries. No, Republicans and Democrats alike, we're not interested in coming out to the polls, it seems, but particularly the Democrats. But now in the last 10 days or 2 weeks, things are picking up.
One of the things that you have been claiming is that Mr. Westland, the incumbent Republican in the 2nd District, has one of the worst voting records in Congress, and yet Jack Westland is remaining in Congress until it adjourns. How do you square that with what you claim to be his record?
Well, this year he seems to be staying on the job more, possibly because it's called to his attention. He does have, according to many people's judgment, the poorest record of any congressman west of the Mississippi River.
Mr. Moore, concerning your background as fisheries director, twice you've been fisheries director in Washington State. You've served in advisory capacities in that area for the federal government. Is this playing a big part in your campaign?
I believe it is, because the fisheries resources are in such bad shape, and the invasion of the Russians and the Japanese in the North Pacific, and no one standing up real hard to fight for fisheries. I think that the interest is focused on me, because I believe that we have some answers. at least we have to stand up and protect our historic fishing rights and to do something for conserving this important resource.
What's your stand on President Kennedy's Medicare program?
I'm for Medicare. I believe it's a very important program. I think it's a basic issue in this campaign where the Republicans generally are opposed to it and the Democrats are for it. I'm for the program.
Are you finding that your campaign funds are building up now that you're heading into the last weeks of the general election?
Well, I wouldn't say they're building up, but they're coming in. We're getting a few more dollars for advertising and getting out pamphlets and information.
Well, if you're going to campaign in this kind of weather, I suppose you must be pretty serious about this. Do you think you have a good chance of winning?
Yes, I think I have a good chance of winning, especially if we get out a good vote. But this being an off-year election makes some doubt there. But it does look good in the last week, and particularly I think labor and the common man is waking up.
What's your analysis of Snohomish County? This county has been traditionally Democratic, and yet Representative Westland has managed to take Snohomish County the last 2 times. Do you think you can get it back from him, and is this the key to the 2nd District?
I think it is the key to the 2nd District, and I think he didn't have a strong candidate before. I think I can make a little better showing and my predecessors did on the Democratic ticket.
What about meetings? Are you arranging meetings around the district?
Yes, I'm having meetings and coffee hours and breaks and so on and rallies, and it's looking good.
Mr. Moore, have you got any plans specifically for Whatcom County?
Yes, we do. We've checked over the industrial possibilities and from new ideas here, and I think we can materially help the farmers get a better price for his milk and chicken raisers for their chickens and poultry. And I think that by building Drayton Harbor into a fish farm, possibly Terrell Creek up there at Birch Bay, and develop the recreational area a little better, we'll get more tourist travel. I think Whatcom County is definitely in trouble unless some new life is given here to stimulate a little more interest in business and tourism. I think that there are several things. I've been working with Jack Pierce and some others interested in the welfare and the economic situation here in Whatcom County, and I know that I can do a better job to help the lumber industry, because back there in Congress, they go to meetings, they take a vote, but nobody's really working hard because of this import question.